Hello, those of you out there in YouTube land. Welcome to another episode of Develop with WP. As always, my name is Bobby, and today we are going to be continuing on our How to Build a Plugin series, and we're actually getting into some really cool stuff, some stuff that I've been messing around with a lot over the last couple of months, and that is Ajax. So, probably one of the more subtle but cool features of this plugin is the fact that we're creating a drag and drop reordering system so that you can actually reorder the order in which posts will be displayed on the front end, which is really, really cool. It's a very slick piece of UI that I think comes off really well. The problem is that Ajax, while I don't think it's complicated now, at one point I thought I'd never figure out. So it is kind of, I'm just going to go say it is kind of a complicated process. And the reason it's complicated is because, especially within WordPress, is because there's a lot of different stuff going on here. We're going to be doing we have to do some localization within scripts. We have to create a custom saving function that's going to handle the data that we pass to it via the Ajax call. And then we also just have to mess around in JavaScript for a while and do the actual Ajax call. With all that being said, I've thought about this. Actually, I've recorded this video a few times, and I've just come to the conclusion that I really need to break this down into a lot of little pieces. When I was first searching around, trying to learn about Ajax, it was a slow, painful process. And along the way, I did find a couple of good tutorials out there, but I never really found the one that worked for me. And so that's kind of the goal here. I'm going to try and do this as best I can. And I think the best way to do that is to break it down into separate videos. So in today's video, we're just going to focus on the JavaScript side of things and just focus on the Ajax request itself. So let's get started. This is where we left off the last time. I kind of touched on this, but I kind of want to talk about it a little bit more because we're going to store a couple of more variables like this. So I really just kind of want to, for those of you that have not done something like this or aren't really sure what's going on here, I want to break this up a little bit. So if I remove the var, which I'll explain why in a second, and I go to our page and I refresh, if I type in sort list and hit enter, you'll see that this variable actually has this entire DOM element stored in it. And it also has, it's an array, and it has all of the children as well. So it has this whole little chunk of code stored in this one little variable. And right now we're calling sortable, Jquery Sortable on this element. So that's what we're doing here. And we're going to do this with a few more, we're going to create a few more variables that are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to store a reference to the DOM in a variable. It just makes it clean and a lot more user-friendly down here later on, especially if you're going to be if you're going to be referencing this element multiple times. So why did I take the var off? The var, so in JavaScript, because we have jQuery document ready and this is essentially a function. If you create a variable inside of a function and you leave off the var, which you can, what happens is that jQuery makes this a global variable, which is why I was able to just access it just now. So by leaving the var off, this becomes a globally available variable that can be accessed from other functions within the code. And that's generally not ideal. I mean, sometimes you do need that, but in this case we don't. And so I encourage you that anytime you're creating variables within functions, if you know for a fact that that variable is not going to be accessed or needed anywhere else, make sure to explicitly create it with the var statement. So for example, if I go right now and put that var on there and I refresh and I type sort list, you'll see that it doesn't pre-populate, and when I hit enter, that it's not defined. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a few more. We're going to create one more called animation, and animation is going to store this image right here, this animation image, and you can see we give it an ID of loading animation, so we'll target that with jQuery. Alright, and the reason we're creating this is because we're going to be toggling on and off our little spinner Our spinner is not there anymore because right now we have it hidden with CSS. There's a little spinner here, and so we're going to capture that element in a variable, and we're going to be using that to turn it on and off as this application takes place. That way the user knows that like something is happening. It's just a little UI thing. The other variable we're going to store is called page title, and page title is going to be this sort job positions. We're just trying to store this. And what we're going to be doing with this later is we're going to be appending to the end of it some success and error messages. And we're going to access that by div h2. Okay, and again, if I take off the var, we can just confirm this, that I am targeting the right element and not the wrong element. So if I go page title, hit enter, you'll see I get an H2, and if I open it up, you see that it is in fact this H2. So sometimes it might be worthwhile to check to make sure you are, especially when you're starting out, make sure you are targeting the right thing. Because for example, if I had just put div and refresh this, oops, refresh, and called page title again, I get like every div that exists to mankind. So that's not what you want. So you want to make sure that you are targeting the right thing. Alright, so enough with messing around with variables. So how is this going to work? Well, Jquery Sortable, if we look it up, and let's bring it up, Jquery Sortable update. If we look in Jquery Sortable, you'll see that there's an event called update. And if we look at this, it says this event is triggered when the user stops sorting and the DOM positions have changed. So this update event triggers when I drag this and let go and it clicks into place and this has changed. That's when update's going to take place. And actually, if we look at the console right here, you can actually see this happening, on the fly, and you can see the numbers 17 and 18. See those IDs change, 17 and 18. So when that happens, update runs, and so that's the event we're going to listen for. We're going to listen for this update event, and you can see you pass in two parameters, event and UI. So let's go ahead and do that. Create this event update function, and we're going to pass event and UI. And then within this function, we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that animation that we had stored above, and we're going to use a jQuery function called show, and that's just going to remove the hide CSS that we have and actually show the animation. And if I'm not mistaken, if we go here now and refresh, if you see me move this, you should see that animation pop. See, now it's showing all the time. We're going to fix that. So that's that. The next thing we're going to do is the actual Ajax request. So we're going to use jQuery Ajax. So we do $Ajax. And this is where things get a little crazy. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff here. Put a semicolon. All right. So the first thing we have to do is we have to tell jQuery the URL or the endpoint for which to hit. And for WordPress, we're very fortunate, especially working within the admin, is that we have access to a variable that says where to send these requests. So if I do, and it's called Ajax URL. And if I refresh the page, go to the console, and if I type in Ajax URL, you'll see that it leads to WP admin and then a file called adminajax.php. And adminajax.php is the file within WordPress that's going to handle our Ajax requests. So we've told it where to go. The next important thing we need to tell it is what type of request is this? Is this an update, a post, a GET request? What kind of request is it? In our case, it's a POST request. We're sending data to the server. And then this one is, there's a number of different data types that you can receive back. And if you leave it blank, Ajax will try and determine what it is, but we're going to be explicit here, which is something you hear me say a lot. And we're going to explicitly state that we want JSON. And then the last important part is the actual data. This is the actual data that we are sending. And there's two things we're going to send right now. We're going to come back to this later in another video and add some more stuff to it. But for right now, all we're going to send is the action. And this is the action that we are going to use later to actually save, to update these posts so that they remain changed. And this is unique. This is something that I've created. You could name this whatever you want. You'll see in later videos how this has to line up somewhere else in your code, but it can be whatever you want. But this is just saying what action do we want you to execute when this Ajax request comes through. And then the last thing is another custom variable called order. I'm just calling it order, and it's going to contain the actual order of the variables or of these elements. So what I want to do is I want to pass along these IDs. These actual IDs that we're storing in here, I want to pass those along, and I want to pass them in the order in which they are. So like right now they're 17, 18, 19. If I move this down here, now they're 18, 17, 19. I want to send that to the database. And the way I'm going to do that is with calling sortable, which is our variable we defined up here, or sorry, sort list, which is the variable we had defined, dot sortable. And then sortable, we're going to pass in a call to make this to array, which is going to convert those values into an array, and then we're going to then take it and convert it to string at the end. And I'll show you this in just a minute. So if this is a little confusing, just know that order, this variable order, contains the data that we need to send. So we're sending two things here. We're sending the action to take when this Ajax request hits the server, like what should it do with it, and then the data that it's actually going to get. That's all we're doing here, and I need to spell this right. There we go. So that's the actual request. The last two things that we have are a success and an error message. So success is going to be a callback function that's built into Ajax. We're going to get a response with that. And I need a semicolon there. And then the other function that we're going to get is an error function. And for this one, we're just going to get an error for now. Okay, so this is our request. We're going to do a lot more. This is just the bare bones basics of it. But you kind of get the idea, I think, here. We're storing some elements in a variable on this update function within sortable. When update kicks off, it's going to show an animation and run an Ajax request. We've then built out that Ajax request. We've given it the pertinent information it needs right here to successfully complete that Ajax request. And then we've given a success and error callback function that will that we can use to do different things, whether this request is successful or not. So let's do one more thing to do this. So let's do console.log, and we'll just type success, and then down here for error we'll just do console.log error. Let's see what happens. Hopefully everything works. Alright, so we don't have any errors yet. So if I pull this down and drop it, you'll see that I get success. And that's because, you know, it was successful. Now I want to make a point here. This success, this is merely just showing, this is just saying, hey, this request that you built here was successfully able to find their endpoint. It's not a very big check, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's simply saying that this Ajax request was able to go through as expected. Whether or not any of this data or any of this stuff saved, obviously it's not saving because we haven't set that up yet, but it's not, as you can see, it's not checking any of that, and we're going to have to handle that later. So just know that this is a very low level success function. The other thing I want to show you is that if I do take this URL and change it to a string instead of a variable, obviously Ajax URL is not a valid URL, so this should error out. So if I refresh and I move this, obviously we get a 404 not found, but you also see that our console log error message popped up. So that's good. That means that these two functions have been set up properly and they are executing properly. The next thing that we need to do, so that's good. I guess the next thing to do would be to use these success and error functions in a more useful way. So let's do that. And then that'll pretty much be it for this video. So I think we made a lot of progress so far. Obviously the Ajax request is working. That's really good. So let's do something with this. So let's go ahead in the success function and let's do animation.hide. So we told it on update to show the animation, but once it's successful, we no longer need that animation to be there. So we want to take it back to and make it hidden again. And then we're going to use our other variable that we had defined, page title, which is that div h2 title. Excuse me. And we're going to run a function called after, not like that. Okay. And then we're just going to pass into it. We're putting something after this element. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a div that is styled using WordPress classes and whatnot with a text string, a string of text that says job sort order has been saved. So let me show you. I'm just going to copy this because it's just a long string of text. All right, so we're just saying we're outputting a div with the ID of message, the class of updated, and below h2, and it has a p tag that says job sort order has been saved. That's all it says. And then for the error message, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. We're going to do page title dot after. But this time we're going to put out a different message, obviously. And this message is going to be I'm going to get rid of this ID because you can't have two of the same ID anyway. So this class is error. I'm also going to get rid of this. I think this is some legacy code. Bear with me. Let's see if this works. But this one simply puts out a div with the class of error and a p tag that says there was an error saving the sort order or you do not have the proper permission. So that's just a check that says, you know, it didn't work. Okay? So let's save this. Let's refresh. If you remember, we still have this as a string, so it should still fail. So let's see what happens when we drag something. Boom, it fails, and then we get this little error message. It says there was an error saving the sort order. So it's just putting out our string, and you see this this coding. This is because I used the class of error, which is a built-in WordPress class. All right, so now let's go and let's take this and make it right. And refresh, and now when I drag it, you'll see that I get a nice green. It says job sort order has been saved, and that little thing went away. Let me check one more thing really quick. I wanted to check if I do error, does that spinner still spinning? That's the question. It is. So let's go ahead and do this animation hide on error as well, because we don't need that to be there. Refresh. So we just want it to spin for a second. You can see it pop there for just a second, and then it disappears. So that's good. Fix our URL. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so that's it for this video. You know, I wanted to just focus on the JavaScript. We're going to continue to build this thing up and do a lot more stuff to it, as well as do the PHP WordPress side where we actually go and make it so that when we refresh, we don't lose our order. So there's going to be 2 more videos to follow. I think it's going to be 2 more videos. But nonetheless, I hope you have a better understanding of how just basic Ajax works. and how sortable works and how we're using this update event listener to kick off this command. That's the key, right? This update event is what's triggering all of this to happen. The Ajax also has some callback functions that then trigger other things to happen based on whether or not it's successful or not. So I feel like I did a pretty good job here. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, and we can do our best to solve those problems for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. As always, share, like, subscribe. Let us know we're doing a good job, or let us know we suck. Either way, I can take it. The goal is to provide a better product. So if there is a problem, let me know. Thanks. Have a good day.